Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 626 on Wednesday, the 9th of April, 2025. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. And this week you'll discover how the car industry has again shot itself in the foot. In new car news, you hear about another comeback car. And in points of interest, you are invited to fantasy shop in France. But first, we have just a tiny little bit of follow-up, and really it's a statement more than anything. With everything we said last week about the tariffs has changed and is still changing, there's no stories to it because, well, as of when you listen to this, because it's all going to have changed again. I mean, it's probably changed by the time we finish recording. We've got no chance of coming to any end results with this, so we can't bring anything to you.
Our follow-up is breaking news from the other side of the world right at the moment. Yeah, all the tariff stuff from last week, just throw it out the window.
or maybe not. Who knows?
Yes.
Anyway, let's go on to stuff we do know about and we are very sure about, shall we, Alan?
Yeah, it is, well, we just missed them last week, but it is the March new car registration figures, and the percentage numbers and stuff are good. There were 357,103 new car registrations in March 2025. That is up 12.4% on last year. Petrol cars are down at 0.4%, 176,847 of those registered. Diesel are down 10%, that's just under 21,000 of those registered. Hybrid electric vehicles up 27.7%, that's 56,161. Battery electric vehicles up 43.2% with 69,313, making a 19.4% market share. And last but not least, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, 33,815 of those registered, 37.9% rise from mere 9.5% market share.
And now there should be no surprise whatsoever in the rise in March, should there, Alan?
No, there shouldn't.
Although it did seem to surprise quite a few people who made wild statements, silly statements, about how vibrant the battery electric vehicle market was.
Absolutely nothing to do with taxation changes from the 1st of April then, which means that everything's going to be more expensive. So everybody was rushing to get their orders in, to get their VIN numbers in, and everything to mean that they were all registered before the 31st of March.
Yep.
Making it a bumper month. It means next month is going to be down. And May is probably also going to be down on last year because there's a whole load of bunching together into March. We've had similar before in the past when we've looked at stuff when there were anomalies on comparing year-on-year figures. Again, because of taxation changes, because of incentive changes, all of these kind of things, and also COVID-y stuff too. As far as who was registering, private buyers up 14.5% to 41.2% market share. Fleet buyers up 11.5%, and business buyers are down by 0.3%. But they form a very small percentage anyway, only 2.2% market share. Again, as ever, fleet making up more than half of all registrations in a month.
Yep.
Nothing particularly new there, but if you've got loads and loads of vehicles to buy, then those taxation changes that affect private buyers affect you even more because you'll multiply it by 20 or 30 or whatever, how many vehicles you need.
Yep.
Let's quickly run through the top 10. It's a strange one, this one, but we'll get to that whenever we get to it. Number 10, Volkswagen Tiguan, 5,464 registrations. Number 9, the MG ZS with 5,907. Number 8, the Ford Kuga, 5,949. Number 7, the MG HS. Number 6, the Volkswagen Golf. Number 5, the Nissan Juke. And number 4, the Nissan Qashqai, taking us to 6,844 Qashqai registered. Number 3 is the Vauxhall Corsa, one of the very few not an SUVs in this top list, or one of the very few not a compact SUVs.
One of the very few actually could be an EV in this top list.
There is that too. 6,851 Corsas registered. Number 2 is the Kia Sportage, 7,000 874. So that's a jump of 1,000 between those two, whereas every other vehicle from 10th to 3rd, it's only been a couple of hundred at most between each of the models. Significant jump of about 1,000 from between the Corsa and Sportage. And between Sportage and the Ford Puma, which is coming at 11,132 registrations. I'm going to let somebody else do the maths on that. It's 3,000 and something. Yeah, just over 3,000 there between the Sportage and the Puma. That's a suspiciously big jump, really.
Yes.
I don't know what's happened. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything or pre-registering and stuff, but that's a lot. And if it was that big a fleet, someone would have pimped the fleet.
I think if we look at the whole registrations for the entire list of brands, I am very confident there will be some cracking, nearly new deals in the coming months on Auto Trader. Let's just put it like that.
Yes, agreed. That's all I'm going to say on that. Shall we do the spreadsheet of doom?
Yeah, let's run through that doom. And Abarth is down 42%. Alpine is down 71%. Citroen is down 54%. DS is down 59%. Fiat is down 39%. GWM is down 91%. Honda is down 26%. Last year, they registered 7,919. This year, 5,851. So that is quite a drop for them. The inevitable Jaguar drop, that's at this moment in time, that's 84%. Maserati is down 29%. Nissan is down 18%. Now, that is quite chunky. 20,559 last year, 16,778 this year. They've got new models coming out eventually this year. That should help them. Seat is down 33% and Suzuki is down 33%.
Yeah. Oh, I was having to explain to someone about there not being Jaguars being built and everyone was from stock at the minute. And they were quite surprised by this. Hadn't really registered, so to speak. No pun intended. Let's look at the greens then. Alfa Romeo up 214%. BYD up 753.75%. That's not the MG award for ridiculous percentages. We will come to those at the end. Cupra is up 55%. And Dacia is up almost 20%. Ford is up 39%. Still, it's actually up year on year, isn't it?
Well done, because that's the first month in many months that they have actually gone in a positive direction.
Yeah, up 6.56% compared to last year, in the year to date. Genesis up 52%, Jeep up 60%, Mazda up 49%, MG up 22%, Peugeot up 35%, Polestar up 203%, Skoda 36%, Smart 26%, Volkswagen 43%, and Volvo 58%. Now, I did say I'd come to the MG award for ridiculous percentages, and it's split this month between Chevrolet and Maxus, which both went from registering one vehicle in March 2024 to registering 10 vehicles in March 2025. I can only assume that the Chevrolets were just happens to be the number of personal imports or something. But it is new car.
Aren't they?
You fill in a different. It must be Corvette. Somebody will have brought in a set of Corvettes.
They're coming over with the Corvette.
Are they? Okay, well that's probably that. And
remember, we've covered this. There's a place in. Is it Manchester or Scotland that are going to be the northern area dealer?
That's true. Yes, you're quite right. We did cover that, didn't we? And Maxus, maybe they brought some of those MPV thingies over. And that's that, folks.
Yeah, my cause is the usual. Please support the industry. We need help. This has only happened because the tax changes and massive incentives and money off and good deals from manufacturers, but it's not sustainable.
You mean everything that we said that some people seem to miss out on articles was actually right there in the article?
Yeah.
Press it for, okay, good, right.
From SMMT themselves.
Yes. Never mind. Moving on from that, and speaking about incentives and governments and stuff, news about hybrids and the zero-emission vehicle mandate. Andrew.
The UK government has decided it's going to tinker around the edges of the zero-emission vehicle mandate whilst pretending that they are supporting and helping the car industry.
Well, they are.
It is tinkering, though. One of the good things that has happened is that they have clarified finally that hybrids can still be sold from 2030, because Boris Johnson announced that hybrids only with a meaningful electric range would be able to remain on sale, and no one ever defined what meaningful was. Yes.
It's convenient, that, isn't it? Wonderfully convenient.
And this is where so many got it wrong about, they're banning from 2030. They were never going to ban hybrids. They just needed to define what hybrids would be allowed. It was presumed for a long while that it would be plug-in hybrids, but now the UK government have allowed normal hybrid, as in no plug is required. They can be sold moving on. They've also changed the ability to offsetting credits on through to 2029. Because everybody's talking about how this year they need to hit 28% EV or zero-emission sales mix. That is with the credit. So realistically, you can get away with 22% as a manufacturer and then credit with the rest, as Nick Gibbs reminded me on Blue Sky this week.
Yeah. That is an interesting one we talked last month about Tesla and their wonderful registration numbers. Remember? You can register without selling in the UK. That's a big difference compared to other places.
Yes.
Registration comes first, then sale, not sale, then registration.
And that neither confirms nor denies whether we are pro or anti-Nazi in the UK.
Totally. But remember, if Tesla don't have enough cars registered, careful wording here, then they can't sell credits for the cars that they haven't registered. Because other companies need to buy. It gets to the point where the registering of the selling of the car is not the important bit.
No.
Or having it out there is not the important bit. They get money from having registered a car.
Yeah.
They can then sell a car for significantly less as used or pre-registered or something along those lines.
Like nearly £15,000 less.
Having claimed back, they're getting £10,000-15,000 for simply having registered it and then selling the credit.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
It needs to be said as a slight hamper for that business strategy, if that is what a company is in fact doing, that the fine is actually being reduced down to 12,000, I believe. I'm trying to find it in this Autocar article that is linked in the show notes here. Yeah, it is going to be £12,000 per car over the target.
It's just worth saying for other companies that might only sell EVs, that is something worth just keeping at the back of your mind, that even if they register at a loss, then because they've registered, they can sell the credit on the sort of however it is that they all trade credit marketplace sharey thing.
Yeah, this Autocar article quite rightly points out that the government decided in explaining what are hybrid cars and what will now be able to be sold moving forward, they cited the Toyota Prius, which is only a plug-in hybrid now, and Nissan's Qashqai e-Power car, which is the name of the hybrid system. It is not a car. It's just like, come on, lads, please get this. This is important. You should be able to get this right.
It isn't difficult.
Moving outside of that, because I just don't want to be cross if I can help it today, low volume car makers are now going to be exempt from the 80% EV sales mix target that they have to hit in 2030. How true this is, who knows now, because the government has cited McLaren and Aston Martin as specific examples.
No, but I'm sure, people like Morgan, Caterham, etc.
Yeah.
Although Caterham is, of course, gearing up with the EV, with that EV sports car, that's good news for them as well.
Do click the link in the show notes to read through all this, because the Autocar article is pretty good and does explain a few of the foibles that have unfortunately stuck in the narrative when talking about the zero-emission vehicle mandate since it's come around.
Worth mentioning Felix Page for that one, and obviously his team. Autocar for putting that particular article together. There must have been a lot of work went into that one.
Yes. I think the problem here is I don't think it's going to really make much difference because of external factors.
No.
There's still a cost of living crisis going on. And as per the follow-up, who knows what's going to happen with that side of things, whether it tanks the global economy or not. It's one thing, which has always been said about this, it's one thing for a government to mandate a market. It is different when there is long-term evidence contrary to what they want from the consumer.
Yeah, that's the biggest sticking point with all of this. There's quite a lot of looks great on paper policy, but then it's very difficult to be able to implement that en masse because it requires the decision-making of others and many other external factors to that particular policy.
Yep.
Shall we move on to something different then?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, this one is kind of technical.
And not in a good way, though.
And not in a good way, yeah. Manufacturers and some trade bodies have been hit with some chunky anti-competitive fines, both in the UK and in Europe. They total up to about £460 million. And these are because a group of car makers agreed not to compete on a couple of things. Now, it's in two parts. So the first part is about a group of manufacturers agreeing not to compete against each other when advertising the percentage of their cars that could be recycled. This is stating in adverts that... Let me read this word. The CMA found that all the manufacturers in the scheme agreed not to advertise if their vehicles went above the minimum recyclability requirement of 85%. So that's set in stone. That's a requirement to manufacturers. 85% of new vehicles have to be recyclable. And they all said, if we go above that, we're not going to make anyone else look bad by saying how much better we are than everyone else. That was with the exception of Renault. It's worth saying the group of manufacturers involved here were BMW, Ford, JLR, Mitsubishi, Nissan, Renault, Toyota, and Volkswagen, Stellantis, and General Motors as well. Mercedes-Benz was also included in this group, but they won't incur a penalty because it ratted.
Yes.
No, it didn't. It told the CMA that it was participating in that scheme as well. There were other forms sort of involved, but not completely. Honda, Hyundai, Kia, Mazda, Suzuki, and Volvo were also kind of involved in that too. Well, not so much in the advertising part, but much more in the second part, which was all about end-of-life vehicles. In theory, manufacturers are required to offer customers that they will recycle old, written off, or end-of-life vehicles. In theory, you can go along and you can say, look, this car is totally knackered, it's completely finished with, it has zero value to me, please take it away and deal with it. You don't have to pay a scrap man to take it away, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
What should happen is that the manufacturers engage with third-party vehicle recycling companies to then extract what they can from it and all of that kind of thing. BMW, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, Peugeot, Citroën, Renault, Toyota, Vauxhall, Volkswagen agreed that they wouldn't pay companies to handle the recycling of their end-of-life vehicles. And as a result, the companies that provide that service basically couldn't negotiate prices with manufacturers for doing so. And that just meant that nobody did it.
Mm.
It just wasn't worthwhile, so there were no companies that provided that service because nobody would agree to pay for that service at all. And with that, it doesn't make a very good business model if any of your potential customers have agreed that they don't want your service. As a result, the fines for that totaled £77,688,917. Again, Mercedes-Benz was granted immunity. Several firms applied for leniency and received settlement reductions as well. It's really not very good behaviour at all by most of the European car manufacturers, most people who manufacture cars
and the trade
cars
bodies.
In the EU.
SMMT and the European Automobile Manufacturers Association have both been fined as well for being part of this.
Yeah.
And that's really, really poor. All of this is really poor, but that's shocking. Just at a time where you go, come on, there's a problem with trust, etc., etc. You're asking for money, you're pushing the government to help out, and then this comes out. It's like, well, you are reaping what you sow, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, but that is your own fault.
Yep. That was that one. Phew, I'm so glad we're through that, because that was a really technical one. I hope you could follow it at home, because I had trouble following it here, to be perfectly honest.
Again, another good Autocar article linked in the show notes for you.
Yeah. McLaren.
Yes, some good news. McLaren has merged with FORSEVEN to create the McLaren Group Holdings, which means that the future of McLaren is secure in the short to medium term.
It's significantly more secure than it was a couple of months ago anyway.
Yeah. Both of these companies are actually owned by CYVN Holdings, which is the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund company. They also own Gordon Murray Technologies. FORSEVEN actually have a bunch of vehicles almost ready for production, but they didn't have a company's badge to throw on them and sell them via. The expectation is now that McLaren will be selling these vehicles. They include EVs. They also include an SUV, which should surprise nobody whatsoever. Hopefully they've learned from how Lotus have handled that one.
Yes, do a Porsche, not a Lotus when it comes to that, please, everyone.
Yes. And this is, I was a bit facetious at the beginning. It is good news because no one wants McLaren to disappear. Let's be honest about that. Let's see what the FORSEVEN vehicles are going to be. Let's see how McLaren bring them out. Do they have a sub-brand? Is it all going to be under just McLaren's badge? Let's find out. It's going to be interesting to see how this is executed. And they apparently are implementing the new strategy straight away to move forward. That is according to Nick Collins, who is the CEO.
Mm-hmm. The other good thing about that in McLaren Group Holdings is that CYNN also has investments in NIO, the Chinese technology company. Obviously, they're pretty good at the whole EV thing. They'll be able to draw in sort of tried and tested technology. They won't be having to invent it all themselves or buy from a group very far away.
They're in a bit of trouble at the moment, and I had seen reports that there is a company that's very interested to buy their battery swap stations and technology. Anyway, Alan, do you want to take us to the on-off love affair that is from France to Japan?
This week, it's been announced that Renault and Nissan are going to redefine their partnership.
Oh, that is a fantastic headline.
It is, and it's for Carla Westerheide for Electrive. It's the article linked in the show notes. But yes, it says Renault and Nissan redefine the partnership. And it summarizes that Nissan will be released from its obligation to invest in Renault's electric car vision Ampere. This was announced by both car makers as part of a series of agreements. I don't know if this is them working out who gets what from the house and all of these kind of parts of the divorce and separation.
I don't think they'd even got that far with Ampere for sure. I'm not sure,
yeah.
And nobody from Nissan or Renault has actually announced how much, if anything, Nissan had actually put into Ampere at this point.
No. They talked about maybe doing some of it, but it doesn't matter ultimately. What's happening is Nissan won't be investing in Ampere. On the other hand, Nissan and Renault will be collaborating on a couple of EVs. One of which...
You say collaborating.
Okay. Nissan is going to be rebadging a couple of Renault EVs, all right?
Yes. The corporate speak is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Yes. Nissan Micra, which has just kind of been sort of sneaked out, not really announced in a great lot of detail, but we'll try and talk about it in a minute, will be essentially a tweaked Renault 5. There will be a new Twingo rebadge as well, name of which doesn't seem to have been announced or anything yet. But there is some cuddling going on.
Yeah, Nissan are taking the bits that's going to help them, which is the cars, and is really doing nothing else. Also, Renault has bought out Nissan's Indian manufacturing joint venture as well.
Renault can use that to leverage the Dacia brand and build those in-country, which will help massively with tariffs and all sorts of stuff.
Yep. That's the latest, this week's version of the Renault-Nissan partnership. We can't even say alliance anymore. There's no way we can say alliance.
No, there really isn't anymore. That does, however, take us to Guilt Minute, quick break in the show where we ask for a tad of financial support to keep the lights on and the hosting running. If you feel that the Motoring Podcast is worth a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of patron include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. But if you don't have any spare cash, and we do completely understand, then you can help us by following for free from our podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show, whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. If you've done all that, and many of you do, thank you very much, then the last thing you can do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues.
Thank you, everyone. It is greatly appreciated.
It absolutely is.
Right, new car news, and I'm going to start with, continuing on from the last article, the Nissan Micra EV, which is just taking the Renault badge off a Renault 5 and slapping on a Nissan badge.
It's not. Don't be silly. Don't be such a cynic. It isn't. Look, it's got a completely different...
What? What's different?
It's got a different front bumper moulding.
Has it? Has it really?
Yeah, and different DRLs. Look, it's got big round DRLs. So there you go. Part of the trouble. Yeah. That's mostly it by the looks of it.
This was revealed a couple of weeks ago. But last week we discussed the Leaf and the Duke EVs that were coming out and the pausing of the cash cow.
You see, the thing is, by announced, there was a picture of a blue car against a blue background, which shows very little apart from the front. Yeah. And there was another picture of where it was a very similar angle, where it was sitting in the murky background behind the Leaf.
Mm.
By announced, it's been kind of like, yeah, we're going to this thing too.
But that was really all Nissan's announcements anyway. There was no detail. However, people can surmise because we know the technical details of the Renault 5. But this does bring up a point that I should have talked about last week. And my question is, as the Leaf is an SUV now, what is the point of it, considering there is the Duke EV?
Now, the trouble is that I don't really have an answer to that.
Because they're very similar sized, if not the same size, and by that they're in the same segment.
My theory, as I put to Andrew when he asked me this before the show, was that there might be some crossover. They won't necessarily all be sold in all the same territories. For example, I doubt the Micra, which has never been sold in North America, will be sold in North America. I doubt the Duke will be sold in North America. I think the North American market will come down to the Leaf. Whereas I think the Leaf in Europe will be slightly secondary. Maybe it's got better access to the rear, and so it's more suitable for taxi type stuff. I don't know, because Dukes are notoriously awful for rear seat space, and the Renault 5 might be too small. I don't think it's entire segments worth of difference. I think that there's maybe slightly different strengths in vehicles of similar sizes, which might mean some are more attractive to one market than to another market. It's a bit like having why did Toyota have the Prius and the Corolla? There's so much crossover. But also I think that major one is whether or not vehicles are designed for global markets or not. I don't think the Micra is. I think it's really for Europe. And if the Leaf sells some, that's great. I think the Leaf is really intended for Japan, for the Far East, for North America, where some of the others just won't be sold.
Okay. Well, listeners, if you happen to have a different theory, do let us know, because we're sort of scratching our chins on that one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to know for sure. I mean, obviously we can sort of postulate and put forward these hypotheses, but that's just based on sort of putting other jigsaw pieces together, and we might not even be looking at the right picture.
Absolutely. Anyway, do you want to move us on to a new British EV sports car company?
Yeah, I'm always skeptical about these, especially when everything just looks like renderings, because I don't know if we'll ever see them again.
It's as though we've had our fingers burnt in the 9.5 years we've been doing this podcast, Alan.
Yeah, I know. A British firm called Longbow has been showing off open roof Speedster and Roadster coupe concepts, both of which are EV, and they're promised to weigh less than 995 kilos. They say that they will be priced at around £65,000, and they should pack supercar pace and a 275-mile range. according to the headlines. The company was founded in 2023 by a chap called Daniel Davey. He previously worked at Tesla and at Lucid. Also by a chap called Mark Tapscott, who worked at both of those firms as well as BYD. And by Jenny Kaisu, who was previously CEO of electric speedboat manufacturer Xshore. The brand has a Latin motto, it seems, which is Celeritas Levitas, which is raise the stringy vegetable. Oh, no, sorry. It's the speed of lightness. And it reflects its ambition of establishing an all-new vehicle category, the featherweight electric vehicle. Alrighty. What do they look like? They look like a Ferrari crossed with an MX-5. The generic sports car thing. The Roadster has no windscreen. It's obviously a two-seater. It has speed fairings behind the what looked like fixed seat pads on it rather than actual movable seats. The coupe looks like that, but with a roof and a windscreen. I find it very difficult to get excited about this. I'm far more excited about what we're going to talk about next than I am about these, because I don't necessarily believe they're going to exist. I'm very sorry if you're listening from Longbow.
I think that is the general feeling from those discussing this or reporting on it, because this Autocar article says, when talking about technical details that have been released, because there's not much, apparently it's a 0 to 62 time of 3.5 seconds from the open roof, which will tip the scales, and I'm quoting here in the article, which will tip the scales at just 895 kilograms, an especially remarkable figure in the context of its claimed 275-mile range.
Because, I don't know, I mean, they've not yet confirmed a factory location, but says the cars will be designed, engineered, and hand-built in the UK. If they're still to be designed, what the heck is that picture at the top then? And it's also not disclosed specific details about the powertrain, but says it's a state-of-the-art package that optimizes weight, performance, efficiency, and range. I'm sorry, I actually feel we're slightly wasting your time talking about this. But I think that's why we're not wasting your time talking about it, because, yes. Mm-hmm.
If it comes to be, that's great.
Yes, it would be lovely to see it in real life and to experience it. However, I'm not sure I ever will.
Mm-hmm. Right, I'm going to move us on to something that is very much real world, and that is the fact that Mercedes, in new van news, Mercedes has almost doubled the eVito van's range to 298 miles. Now, I know the range of the previous eVito was a sticking point for many.
Yeah.
For example, I knew a gentleman who does airport transfers, and he has a Vito to do it. And every time he takes it in to get it serviced, they rush over and say, well, why won't you take an electric one? And he says, because instead of me being able to do 3 or maybe 4 jobs in a morning, I will be able to do 1 because I'll be charging for the rest because of his location and everything and the type of work he does. This has been a problem and continues to be a problem for electric vans, is the actual capability of the technology in the packaging. To give up to 298 miles is great, because that's more than the e-Transit Custom. It's more than the Vivaro. It beats the ID Buzz cargo as well. I'm
amazed how many ID Buzz cargos I've seen. I think most of them have had Mighty branding on them, the facilities management company, for those of you who don't know. But I'm amazed. And actually, I've seen quite a few Buzzes that aren't cargo ones, but maybe that's something to do with part of the world I'm in. I don't know.
If you move to the southwest, I'm sure you will only see them all summer.
Yes. Yes, I have a funny feeling they'll be incredibly popular down there.
Yes.
I think this is good.
Yeah. Anything that improves it and makes it better is good, because the electric van market is horrifically low compared to where the zero emission vehicle mandate. Talking of that, one of the things the government did say is that hybrids could still be sold for vans as well post 2030, which is going to have to happen, because there's no way they're going to be able to meet the needs of many people in that time. Do click on the link in the show notes for the Top Gear article to read more on that.
Can I chime in with one more thing? The other thing that's interesting about this is how it might affect the camper versions. You know, they do the Marco Polo versions of the Vito, and loads of other companies do aftermarket conversions. Then if you've got this, then surely you can drive all sorts of stuff off these much bigger batteries when you're at campsites and stuff, and then charge on the way home or whatever.
Well, you slap a big solar panel on top.
Yeah. Between that and a 12-volt system or whatever, then that might be a huge bonus whenever you're camping or anything like that. Just an idea.
The landscape photographers of the UK will be rushing to transform these into stealth campers. It just seems you're not allowed a YouTube channel unless you've got your own van that you are turning into a camper.
That's what we've never done. That's why we've never done it.
Anyway, that takes us to points of interest, Alan, and you came up with this you found this cracking lunchtime read.
Yes, well, I didn't really come up with it. Yeah, it seems, according to the Autopian articles by Adrian Clark, that it's 50 years since GM started building the GM Motorhome. Now, I've always loved the GM Motorhome. It is the one which is front-wheel drive, 3 axles. It's got the Oldsmobile V8, I think it's the Oldsmobile V8, mounted on top of the front axle and stuff, so it's powerful, it's quick, it's still kind of futuristic looking, because it's all a unibody. It's not sort of Ford Transit or something where somebody's stuck a Tupperware box on the back. I thought this was particularly apt, given it is the start of motorhome season here in the Highlands, and our roads are being infested by slowly trundling Tupperware boxes as they start off the North Coast 500 from around Perth.
Well, now you have a much larger vehicle in which to push them into gorges as they get in your way.
I might still have reputation from when we did Charging Around Britain and was slightly frustrated on some of the single track roads at the very north of Scotland. We had a lot of miles to cover that day.
We did.
And I think we mostly covered them the same day. Yes.
Yes.
But this is an excellent article by Adrian about the GM Motorhome and the thought that went into it and the way it was designed and the powertrain and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, one of the other great things about it was available in colours. You could get it in yellow, in red, in green. I think there was a blue as well, which there's no pictures of those in here. Different coloured interiors. It's properly that space age future that America was so good at, Epcot styly, around that time in the early 1970s. Lots of revolutionary. Another one of these great times when GM were so far ahead of the game, which GM sometimes do, and then it sort of never really goes much further than the first generation of its awesomeness. This is really cool. Have a read through this. If you enjoy the article, or if you're still interested in this, then linked in the show notes will be playlist to a channel somewhere in Georgia-ish where they rescued one of these, and over the course of about a year, because they do loads of other projects too, they have rebuilt it from a derelict vehicle not too far away from being ready for the scrapper, really, or it certainly looked that way, right the way through to shiny. It's all been cleaned up. It's all had most of the interior's been redone, and just going through some of the bits and pieces and some of the mechanics and that kind of stuff. It's a really good series. It's a really interesting vehicle. It's cool to see how it was put together. It's cool to see what they do to it as they do it, and they're quite an engaging watch as well. Great lunchtime read, and more than a lunchtime of watching to go along with it. I think these are awesome vehicles. So cool.
Yep, good one.
Enough eulogizing from me, though.
Right, I'm going to move us on to the list of the week. And it is from Classic and Sports Car. It's from a little while ago, because we didn't actually manage to do a special edition on Retromobile 2025 from front. So this is we're going back in time, but you're going to do some fantasy shopping and pick which of the 30 show-stopping classic cars for sale you would like. Now, Alan, I found this really, really hard.
So did I. Partly because I got to number 4 and it was like, that's the one. That's what I'm going to choose. And then I kept on going. It was like, that's really, oh God, yes. So there's quite a lot of fancy garage stuff in here, to be perfectly honest. And the one I've chosen is not, it's not the perfect one, but it's close enough. And it's a 1930 Bugatti Type 51.
Very good.
Grand Prix car, the Grand Prix Usine. I think that sort of Type 35 through to Type 51, period of Bugatti Grand Prix cars, all of them in blue with those wonderful cast alloy 8-spoke wheels, and the horseshoe grille and all that are just some of the most beautiful cars ever. I just think that they're just wonderful looking things. That is where I don't know why, obviously it tells us what the estimates were here. This one was ex-Prince Bertil of Sweden and ex-Ralph Lauren as well. It competed in the 1931 Nürburgring Grand Prix, and it was used as a test bed for other bits and pieces, including supercharging. It was estimated at between 1.4 and 1.9 million pounds. That's 1.8 to 2.4 million dollars, or 1.7 to 2.3 million euros. I don't know what it went for, so.
No.
Andrew, there's 30 of them. I'm sure there's a chance for you to pick one. I mean, there's...
Yes. Like I said, it was really, really hard, but I have plumped for slide 26 for those playing along at home, and that is the 1986 Audi 5000 CS Quattro Speed Record.
That's one of the ones that I went, oh, that's interesting, but it's not one of the ones that would have made a fancy garage.
Now, the story is, according to the Classic and Sports Car article here, in an attempt to generate publicity in North America, Audi decided to have a go at breaking the record for the fastest all-wheel drive car driven on a circuit. I mean, that's very specific.
It is.
And they did it. They did it with the 5000 CS Saloon. They got Bobby Unser, the Indianapolis 500, multiple Indianapolis 500 winner, to clock 206.3 miles an hour on the super speedway in Alabama. It was going to be scrapped, but the previous owner saved it, and it has been recommissioned by a specialist. I just think it just looks fab, mad, and it's nuts. And the reason why they made it is really daft. And I love that companies used to do that. They don't do these things anymore because somebody is judging things via a spreadsheet rather than using any emotion or feeling.
Common sense. Yeah. I noticed also that it has rear seats and no roll cage or anything inside it as well. Very cool.
It's for when you want your milk really quickly.
There are a couple of vehicles in there which are proper find another one.
Yeah.
And very often you can't because they just don't exist. So really fantastic stuff in there.
Yep. Right. That means the and finally, Alan.
And finally, it's a story by Lewin Day, again from the Autopian. And this time, it's, I think one of the stories that was in for this week and then was removed for this week because it was a bit North America specific and we had more than enough to talk about, as you probably noticed, was about Ford and recalls. The and finally has survived from when that was still in the line. But it's how Ford fixed, in inverted commas, a deadly problem with the sticker to dodge the biggest recall in history. It's a really interesting story about Ford automatic transmission shifters, believe it or not, and how they weren't brilliantly well designed and how they would wear quite badly and how, as a result, your car might roll away. But there was a lot of sort of wiggling, pointing at, well, this is what it says in the manual. In the manual, it tells people to put the park brake on and to make sure it's solidly in park before leaving the driver's seat. And so what they did to get out of having to recall everything and change the Part 7A216 column gear shift selector lock thingy was to issue and send out a little sticker to everyone to put on their dashboard inside of the driver's seat, should they wish, to tell them to make sure the gear selector was in park, set the parking brake fully, and to shut off the ignition in that particular order. And basically by that point, if you didn't do that, or if you didn't follow the sticker, then it was all your own fault. So tough.
Yes.
All words to that. That's kind of like, I may have paraphrased a bit.
Yes. There might be a more legalese way of putting it.
There was. The more legalese way of putting it is there's actually a scan of that letter from April 1981, included in the article. It's a bit of a bonus lunchtime read, but yeah, I do have a little bit of a read through it. And you just think, oh boy, explains a lot.
Well, we've made it through, Alan.
We have. We've made it to the end. Next week, we should be back on Tuesday, recording on Tuesday. Releasing on Wednesday as usual. So thanks for bearing with us this week whilst we're slightly out of sync. But other than that, don't forget between now and next week, you can give us any feedback and share your thoughts of the show at motoringpodcast.com on Blue Sky, at Motoring Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and the contact page of www.motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon. Please leave a review and rate on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is if you search for Crack Windscreen on Blue Sky, you should find me there. If not, and if you would prefer, I am on LinkedIn under my full name. So, Alan, if people would like to get in touch with you personally, how should they do that?
Best way to get in touch with me is to use Blue Sky, where I'm at ajpbradley.bsky.social. That's Bradley for my surname. And we'll be back soon. But until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.